Have you ever wondered why Chinese dynasties, despite having totally different leaders, geography, and military strength, pretty much always collapsed in a violent mess every 300 years? Seriously, it's one of the most captivating mysteries out there. For centuries, people have asked, was it just terrible luck? Did they hit an agricultural wall? Was it some kind of mystical curse? Well, today, in this explainer, we're going to unpack a framework that says it wasn't any of those things. Actually, it all boils down to one massive, centuries-long, and ultimately broken implicit contract. To really wrap our heads around this, let's step away from ancient history for just a second. I want you to imagine a super relatable scenario. Picture this. You saved up, bought a beautiful house, and diligently paid off your mortgage. You've got the deed in hand, it is absolutely yours. But 30 years later, the original property developer just shows up at your door. They tell you, hey, we're out of money, so we're unilaterally voiding your purchase contract. They say the house belongs to them again, and if you want to stay, you have to pay the full purchase price a second time. How would you react to that? You'd be furious, right? You'd feel totally robbed. Hold on to that exact feeling, because that dynamic is the very engine driving the rise and fall of these massive empires. And that brings us to the absolute core of what we're talking about today, the historical rights contract theory. This framework suggests there's this unwritten, implicit contract between a state and its people. Basically, citizens pay their taxes and obey the rules, and in exchange, they are essentially redeeming or buying back their basic safety and property rights from the ruling authority. So under this lens, a dynasty collapsing isn't some unstoppable force of nature. It's actually a direct unilateral breach of this exact implicit contract by the state. Okay, phase 1, violence for peace. Let's dive right into how this grand historical contract actually gets forged in the first place. Because, as you might guess, it doesn't start with a polite handshake. It starts with blood. Back in the chaotic transitions between dynasties, there is no rule of law. It's literally the law of the jungle. A new dynasty's founder gains absolute dominance over the land and everyone's lives through sheer violent conquest. But here's the thing. Ruling purely by the sword every single day, that is incredibly expensive and totally exhausting. So to lower the cost of ruling, the conqueror offers a preliminary contract. The deal is basically, stop fighting me, hand over some of your crops, and I will stop killing you and protect you from other bandits. Then, over generations, we enter the redemption phase. Through their taxes, their labor, and civil service, the common people are systematically paying to redeem their right to simply exist, to run a business, and to own private property. Moving on to phase 2, whose rights are they? As things stabilize, a really dangerous contradiction starts building up right beneath the surface. You see, you get this fatal friction between two completely opposite viewpoints. Over hundreds of years, the ordinary citizens have built up vested rights. From their perspective, they're thinking, my ancestors paid taxes for centuries. This land, my social status, my right to trade, I legally bought and paid for this stuff. It's mine. But the dynasty? Their perspective literally hasn't changed since day one. The emperor thinks, every inch of land under the sky belongs to me. The rights you enjoy are just a gift that I let you have, and I can take them back whenever I want. This massive disconnect about who actually owns what is basically a giant powder keg just sitting at the heart of the empire. For the first century or two, the economy is booming, the treasury is full, so everyone just kind of ignores this contradiction. It's fine. But eventually, every empire hits a mid to late stage financial crisis. So the million-dollar question, what happens when the money actually runs out? That brings us to phase 3. Reform is default. When the state goes broke, they desperately scramble to fix it. Now, history books usually call these desperate scrambles great reforms, but this theory completely flips that idea on its head. The bureaucracy gets bloated, royal expenses go through the roof, and the original tax revenue, the original deal, just doesn't cover the bills anymore. So we get these famous policy shifts, like Wang Anqi's reforms. But if you look at it through the rights contract, these aren't just innocent administrative updates. This is the state defaulting on its agreement. The government uses its raw power to strip citizens of the rights they already redeemed. They might nationalize private trade or slap new taxes on land that's been paid up for generations. Remember our real estate analogy? This is literally the broke developer tearing up your contract and double charging you for the exact same house. Now we hit phase 4, viewing the ruler as an enemy. Because once that double charging starts, something profound snaps inside the minds of the people. The exact moment the state voids that contract, the entire moral foundation of the society collapses. The ruler isn't protecting anyone anymore, they're just treating the citizens like crops to be harvested. And the citizens, they experience this massive psychological snap. They suddenly realize, wait, the rights I paid for are completely unprotected? They lose any sense of moral obligation to pay taxes. The state they used to look at as their protector is now just a robber. They see the ruler as an outright enemy. And the real-world fallout from this psychological shift is just absolute chaos. It escalates so fast. Because the people now view the government as the thief, everyone starts evading taxes. Then, desperate citizens just abandon their farms and flee in droves. Eventually, all that boiling frustration spills over into armed uprisings. The old corrupted contract isn't just renegotiated, it is violently torn to shreds by the public. The empire spirals into destruction, resetting the entire board so a new conqueror can swoop in and start the 300-year cycle all over again. But wait, let's look at Phase 5, or rather, the exception, Kangxi's secret. There's actually a fascinating historical anomaly here that proves the rule. The early Qing dynasty managed to last way longer and stay way more stable than anyone expected. Why? Because Emperor Kangxi deeply understood just how fragile this implicit contract was. He issued this famous decree declaring, in this prosperous era with growing population, taxes shall never be increased. Now, that wasn't just a catchy political slogan. In our framework, Kangxi was basically acting as the ultimate guarantor of the contract. He was implementing a nationwide price lock, telling everyone that the state would not arbitrarily jack up the price of their redeemed rights. And it worked. Even when his successor tried to tweak the contract and make the gentry pay taxes, Emperor Qianlong later came in and reversed those defaults. By maintaining the illusion of a solid contract, keeping taxes predictable, and giving the people stable expectations, the Qing dynasty successfully kicked the can down the road. They respected that price lock, which stopped the citizens from viewing the emperor as a robber for a much, much longer time. All right, the 300-year cycle explained. Let's lay this all out on a timeline so we can see how the whole machine operates. It has this remarkably consistent rhythm. Around year 1, you get a violent founding and a brand new, affordable contract is drawn up. By year 150, you hit that mid-dynasty bloat. The state goes broke and pushes through reforms, which, as we know, are just defaults on the deal. Fast forward to year 250, and all that double charging triggers the psychological snap. The citizens now view the ruler as the enemy. And right around year 300, the whole system just caves in under the weight of uprisings, wiping the slate clean for the next guy. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it's pretty profound, actually. A society's long-term stability doesn't come from having beautifully written laws or super complex administrative systems. It relies entirely on the clear, respected ownership of rights. If the ruling power can just change the rules whenever they want, repeatedly harvest the wealth of regular people, and unilaterally take back rights that have already been paid for, society is mathematically guaranteed to spiral into destruction. Which leaves us with a pretty wild final thought. We look back at these ancient empires and think, wow, those implicit contracts were so fragile. But it really begs the question, if the agreements holding those massive dynasties together could be so easily rewritten by the powers that be, exactly how secure are the implicit rights and properties that we assume we permanently own today? Definitely something to chew on the next time you're reading the fine print. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this framework gives you a totally new lens for looking at history.